Hello everyone, welcome to the solo dungeon guide for Spire of the Watcher. I have gone through the dungeon on every class, and I did solo flawless on my Titan with no seasonal mods. And I've put together a little something to hopefully help you get the solo and or solo flawless that you want. Not only that, but all of my experience, every class that I did is without seasonal artifact mods, which should hopefully keep this video relevant a bit longer than Season 19 only. However, you are not limited like I am, and you should absolutely utilize seasonal artifact mods. In Season 19, you're able to buff yourself via Solo Operative, which is just a straight up damage buff, and you're able to debuff bosses via Weakened Clear using a grenade launcher. Witherhoard is going to be perfect for this on both main bosses, despite its recent nerf. For future seasons, refer to my current videos on what the best seasonal mods end up being. Encounters. Let's start with the opener and the pre-boss ascent. Nothing special about these at all. There's no bosses. All you need to do is shoot power nodes and traverse. Pretty much any decent ad clear build here is going to work just fine. Titans, you can stay solar or you can go arc. Warlocks, you have free reign. Hunters, you have free reign. If you're in a position to be soloing a dungeon, you probably have some sort of build in mind at this point, or some build that you are using. I'm not going to be dwelling too much on builds in this video in terms of exact specific setups, since there are a lot of potential builds. Check out my build videos from the past if you need some assistance there. The only things I think I need to mention are that in the opening encounter, I think you should kill the Cyclops immediately to make things a little bit safer. There's nothing worse than getting instant killed by them, but also you're at the start, you know, so it's not a big deal if you die. But you can totally just ignore them if you're moving fast enough. Also, instead of completing each panel one by one, get all 4 of the wires ready to go at the same time and then shoot all of them to end the encounter. You're going to reduce supplicant spawns, as they only seem to happen when you complete a full node. For the first encounter, if you don't kill the Hydras, you will not spawn Harpies either. Hydras are a bit more lethal and harder to ignore, but once you get a rhythm down in this encounter, you will be able to ignore them almost no problem. Don't get too greedy with not killing goblins, though. They can surprise you with their group damage. Toss a grenade every once in a while. Okay, first boss encounter. Let's talk loadouts. Warlocks. You would think Starfire Protocol is the strat here, and for the most part, you are correct. However, the damage strategy here for every class is pretty much the same. Linear Fusion Rifle. You're not really going to be spamming your nades at the boss for damage, although tossing a couple of grenades at the start of a damage phase when the boss is close to you is not a bad idea. That does leave things a bit more open-ended. It's very easy for me to recommend Solar because of Well of Radiance, though. It lets you more or less ignore all enemies during a damage phase and is a free damage buff. Also, Solar Wells aren't too hard to make for Font of Might. Can you have luck with other setups? Sure. I've seen Stasis Warlock with Reeds and Witherhoard popping off. It's great. Little Osmiomancy, you're dropping double turrets before DPS. But do I think most people are going to stick to Solar? Yes, I do. If you're the kind of person who is going to say, I'm going to run this other build instead, I don't know how much this video is really going to have to offer you, because you probably already know what you're doing. Hunters, this is strictly personal preference. Me personally, I loved going around and exploding everything with knives via Caliban's hand, and then I would switch to a Nighthawk for a golden gun shot on the boss. It is the playstyle that I like. It's the one that I prefer. I also tried Gerfalcon, Night Stalker Invisibility, and all that, and it's definitely just as effective, potentially even more effective, but I just didn't like the playstyle. It's not what I'm used to doing. There's also Assassin's Cowl Arc Hunter, allowing you to heal yourself and go invisible after melee kills, then using Gathering Storm for extra boss damage. Titans, I think it's pretty tough to suggest anything other than Solar, thanks to infinite hammers and healing via Loreley, but Void can also work out with the Ward of Dawn if you want to go that route. Arc probably works too. Honestly, as long as you're getting Font of Might, it's probably fine. I'm going to be harping on Font of Might a lot in this video. If you cannot make it work for you, that's okay, but I'd really recommend getting some practice in so that you can reliably proc it. If you don't own this mod, that's okay, just things are going to take longer for you. Weapon-wise, yes, this is going to depend on your subclass and your setup, but we're using linear fusions in most, if not all cases. Cataclysmic, Top tier weapon, 4th times, and bait and switch if you got it. It's solar. Getting Font of Might rolling is really going to cut down on your time spent in this fight, so I want to match my subclass element with my linear fusion element. Cataclysmic, solar, I guess Sail Spy for arc, Typon, Void, Reeds for stasis. Fire and Forget's recoil is a bit tougher to manage, but if that's all you got, then so be it. If you're in Season 19, then Witherhoard is a pretty simple choice thanks to Weakened Clear. If you're outside of Season 19, if there is some sort of debuff mod, you should probably use that and the corresponding weapon if possible. If not, then just carry on. Perhaps Void-based builds might become a bit more popular since they have easy access to the Weaken effect. When it comes to destroying the eyes to start damage, we do need to specialize a bit. Killing eyes as fast as possible is integral to success here, as the faster you kill the eyes on the boss, the more time you get to actually damage the boss. Regular primaries are okay, but we can do better. I used a trace rifle, specifically Hollow Denial, but honestly I think you could probably use any one of them. Trace rifles destroy the eyes very quickly, and if your shooting is really accurate, you won't even need to reload. You can just go straight into damage. Another thing I've seen a bit less frequently is Taraba, as the Ravenous Beast proc will annihilate the eyes really quickly, but that does mean you can't use Witherhoard. Instead, you'd have to opt for a random kinetic grenade launcher to plink the boss in the face to proc Weakened Clear. You're going to see me using Arbalest in all these clips, and probably be asking, why are you using Arbalest? You've been telling us to use Witherhoard. I was not using Witherhoard because I was not using Weakened Clear for this video to make sure that it's still doable, and Arbalest is just what I like to use. Mod-wise, Font of Might. You don't need it, but I do encourage its use quite heavily. For those without any sort of self-buffs, which is going to be most people who are not on Solar to proc Radiant for yourselves, you are going to want High Energy Fire, which means pairing it with probably Elemental Charge, since you should be trying to make wells anyway because of Font of Might, and Font and High Energy Fire stack. Just make sure you have High Energy Fire up for the boss. Don't accidentally kill some stuff before damage starts, otherwise you're going to lose it. Resistance mods, there's a lot of void damage and a lot of solar damage here. I would say use whatever you're struggling against the most. I think I ended up using double concussive in my runs. Probably was not the smartest move, but oh well, we got it. If you're still in Season 19, solo operative, easy choice. If you're outside of Season 19, then please refer to the latest seasonal meta video and then apply what you learn in that video to this encounter and the whole dungeon. Oh, and Elemental Time Dilation if you can fit that as well to extend Font of Might. If you're on Solar Hunter or Solar Warlock, I can also recommend Well of Life for some healing in between the catwalks while you're running. I definitely enjoyed it a lot on Hunter. Titan, if you're running Loreley, I don't think you need it, but it's there if you want it. I also know Healing Grenade exists, but being able to just kill a thing and get healing is really convenient versus using your one-time grenade. Stats-wise, 100 Resilience, it's still good, so if you can get 100 Resilience, get it. If it ever becomes not good, I'm sure there will be videos out there saying what to spec for. If your build requires a certain stat line, maybe you're a hunter, you want a little more mobility, you can probably just stick with that. Resilience here isn't as needed as the next fight. So, what's going to kill you here the most? In a very rare Destiny 2 event, the number one thing that'll kill you here are the enemies. Yes, enemies are actually a little bit dangerous here if you don't have access to some form of healing or invisibility, or if you are completely ignoring all of them. They come from everywhere in the arena. Harpies are very annoying, and the boss hits much harder than you think if you just let them wail on you. Well of Radiance Warlocks won't really need to worry too much about these enemies during damage time. However, they will flinch you, so I would still recommend killing stuff. Pretty much everyone else should try to kill as much stuff in the arena as possible before starting a damage phase. The Harpies should be dead at a minimum if you don't have easy healing, because they can beam you cross map and they are very, very annoying. The second most lethal thing is just the environment. Missing jumps is pretty bad. The boss can also fly near you and physically collide with you and knock you around. Just watch out for that. And then the various tiny holes in the catwalks. They might seem insignificant, but when you slam dunk yourself perfectly through one, they won't seem insignificant then. Watch out for them. Otherwise, this fight feels like the polar opposite of something like Galaron from Duality. There's not a lot to this fight. The mechanic is use Arctrician to chain the power nodes. The fight is the same regardless of how many people you have. You still do things the same exact way, you just have more enemies to shoot. I wish I had more to discuss here, but I really don't. There's not a lot of nuance to this encounter. It's just run and shoot the nodes and kill the enemies. And that's really about it. So let's set up for damage. If you're trying to spawn elemental wells to get Font of Might, shooting the head off of a goblin and have it chase you to where you're going to be dealing damage is the strat. Also, Minotaurs only respawn if you kill both of them, so try to do your damage from a side opposite of where the active Minotaur is. So do your final node opposite of that Minotaur, and it probably won't wander over to you. If you're using a trace rifle, or basically any other gun, you can get right into position and go. If you're using something like Taraba, just don't forget to prep Ravenous Beast beforehand, and make sure you don't switch your guns at any point, because otherwise you'll lose it. The boss will float over, and you can just go to town on the eyes. You need to kill these as fast as possible to get more time on the boss. Once the eyes are all gone, step 1, kill your goblin in whatever way you need to in order to spawn your elemental well, and then pick it up. Step 2, use whatever solar melee you're on to proc Radiant if you need Radiant. Step 3, pop your super, unless it's a well or a ward, which should be popped right before the eyes are revealed, or unless it's a roaming super, in which case definitely don't, like hammers. And step 4, unleash hell on the boss. You can move with the boss as it floats towards the middle a little bit, but don't forget to retreat out of range of that AoE attack when your phase is over. Start with Wither Horde for the debuff, and then linear fusion away. And then after that, well, rinse, repeat. You're going to be here a while, depending on your DPS and how quickly you're killing the eyes. Most classes are going to be relatively equal when it comes to how long it takes to kill the boss, depending on your super that you have access to. Hunters being able to drop an extra 300k from a super per phase kind of helps them speed things along. Just don't forget to swap to Nighthawk before you start the damage phase, and then don't forget to switch back. Yeah, not a lot to this encounter. The mechanic is pretty simple. It's mainly about enemy and ammo management more than it is anything else. There's more complexity in setting up your character's gear and mods than there is anything in this fight. It's just long. That's the thing. It's a long fight. It's an endurance test. In the transition to the final boss, I think the two things that'll kill you are the fan blades and the room with the arc lasers going up. For the fan blades, I've been dropping to the lower level immediately after a blade crosses under me. That's the best timing I've been able to find. Titans have an advantage here, in my opinion, when it comes to safe landings. With regards to the arc laser room, just watch out for the hydras that spawn in the middle and wait for the laser to be pretty high up before crossing. Feels like there's some hitbox wonkiness there, but ideally you're not even crossing into the middle anyway. You're shooting the middle panel from the outside ring anyway. Alrighty, final boss time. Let's talk loadouts. For this boss, you do have some choices. Sleeper with a catalyst, linear fusion, or a rocket. Sleeper ultimately relies on your ability to hit crits. If you're hitting a crit every single time, you're going to do quite well. Same with the linear in general, but legendary linears do suffer a bit more because they rely on 4th times the charm and triple tap procs, and if you're not hitting those crits consistently, it's going to be tough. This is why you see most people using rocket launchers. I did all of my clears with a rocket. You are going to want a rocket with Demolitionist for the instant reload, although be aware there is a brief cooldown on Demolitionist. Then you're going to want whatever the next best perk is for that particular rocket. I have a Hezen Vengeance with Overflow and Demo. It works great for solar builds because I can get Font of Might very easily. If you don't have that, if you happen to have a Hothead with Demo and Explosive Light, that's fantastic. Field Prep, also fine. Auto-loading, and it's a little slow. If you don't have that, then Bump in the Night. You can get the pattern and craft this with Demo. That's going to be a third option. The new Crucible Rocket, Blowout, that can get Demo and Frenzy, Lasting Impression, and Explosive Light, or Explosive Light. Great option too. Gallarhorn's a last resort, but it's solar, so that does blend nicely with Font of Might's solar builds. It just means you can't use Wither Horde, but you can use a different grenade launcher to proc Weakened Clear. If you don't have a Demolitionist rocket, then a Clown Cartridge rocket with some sort of reload speed mod is going to work just fine. Warlocks. Starfire Protocol. Do it. Put it on. Use the build. Just use the build. It is still insanely strong. It is really high damage. Do yourself a favor. Just do it. I know many Warlocks who swap to Karnstein Armlets for the bonus healing and then swap to Starfire during boss time. That is totally fine. Hunters. Again, you got options. I've seen this done on Solar. I've seen it done on Void, on Arc. I'm sure Stasis is doable as well. I did it on Solar just straight up using Caliban's Hand and Well of Life with Blade Barrage. Well of Life was my only healing. Not sure how much I really recommend it to the average player, but it's totally there if you want it. Assassin's Cowl is a very strong and safe pick, especially on Arc, but it's doable on Solar. Void lovers are going to love Gerfalcon with an optional hot swap to Orpheus when the boss is vulnerable. Titans, while I've heard that Arc is a viable method of killing this boss, I did not try using Arc myself. You're going to be on Heart of Inmost Light for most of the boss, swapping to Curus for Thundercrass boss damage, and then off of it as soon as possible. However, it is tough to beat the safety of Solar Titan. I felt the safest on Titan. I very rarely felt in danger. I even feel like I took a Harpy explosion almost to the face and didn't die. Don't quote me on that. Your damage phases will be painfully weak, though, unless you opt for some Syntheseps action, in which case you need to make sure you leave certain enemies alive, or you shoot the heads off of goblins and have them chase you around so that you stay surrounded. I did not use Syntheseps. I just left on Loralee, as that is what I imagine the average player is likely to do. You can feel free to hot swap. This fight, without Synthos or seasonal mods, on my Titan, took me 10 cycles, averaging just under 5 minutes per cycle, although a considerable amount of that time was spent farming my super because my mod setup was not very good. Mod-wise, similar setup. Defensively, you're going to want double Void Resist, as the boss, Minotaurs, and Hydras are all dealing heavy Void. If you want to try to defend against Harpy Explosions, feel free to try, but if you're getting caught on Harpy Explosions that often, you probably need to change how you do this fight. 100 Resilience, I'm going to encourage it much more than I did the previous fight. High Energy Fire is going to be for people without Radiant. Do not bother with Argent Ordnance unless you're willing to get 5x Charged with Light with the proper mods, and then swap to 4x Argent Ordnance pre-boss damage to a completely different set of armor, and even then, it's only a small edge over using High Energy Fire. Just do High Energy Fire and Font with your seasonal mods, it's fine. And don't forget boss spec on your rocket. The number one thing that's going to kill you in this fight is a Supplicant Explosion. These things are fast. They spawn nonstop, and they will murder you if you think about anything other than Destiny for a second while in this encounter. It's very easy to bait their explosions, sure, but their sheer volume and speed is what makes them so dangerous. Get used to them. The next thing that's going to kill you is the boss itself. The boss hurts really bad. You should always be out of line of sight of this boss. Do not gamble on this boss. Stay away from the boss. The boss can dive bomb you if you get too close, and it can fling you into a wall or just deal heavy damage. Stay away from the boss as much as possible. You're going to see me running with double special here again. Bungie claims they fixed an issue where heavy ammo would spawn more frequently when using double special. If they did, it does not appear to be the case. I found power ammo spawned much more reliably using double special, which cut down on farming time in between phases. Let's talk about the flow of this encounter. The fight starts with the double Hydra spawn, one left, one right. As soon as the doors to the next room open, you can go to that other room and take them out from a safe distance. I am always going to encourage safer play due to the lethality of this encounter. You can make things go faster by hanging out in the main room at the start, but it's just a very risky area to be in. You're going to have Minotaurs spawn in next. What I did was take out a bunch of enemies near the Minotaur, and then I rotated sides when the boss showed up, and I did the same thing. However, don't think that just because you killed some, but not all enemies, that they won't respawn, because some eventually will, especially the Supplicants. You're going to want to make a move on the Minotaurs immediately after rotating sides, because the boss is going to be the furthest away from you as it can be. After grabbing a buff, you need to open the door, but in this main room will be a lot of Supplicants, ready to explode you. It is up to you to be flexible and navigate this room based on its current conditions. I don't have a specific path to give you because things are always going to be different. Sometimes the Supplicants are slow, or there's not a ton of them, and you can shoot in peace. Sometimes you're going to be spamming jump or floating all over the place because they're everywhere. Keep your head on a swivel, watch out. If you're landing on the ground, you should know where the Harpies are, because if you don't, the answer to where are the Harpies will most likely be exactly where you're landing. After you power up the door, this is a cat and mouse game of rotating from room to room, constantly moving away from the boss until you're able to trigger both power nodes to completion, while also having your super before you do it, while also having full power ammo before you do it. Sometimes this process can take like a minute or less. Sometimes it'll take you 4 to 5 minutes. The battlefield is constantly changing, constantly spawning enemies, and you just need to be on your toes. Minotaurs will chase you into other rooms, something that they're not typically supposed to do. That's something to be ready for. Enemies are going to start spawning in this second room with the ending power nodes. If you want to buy yourself literally a couple of seconds, drop a Wither Horde right in the middle of the spawn. You should get most of them. This fight's frantic. You just need to constantly be on the lookout. You will eventually develop a rhythm for where certain enemies will show up and when and how to navigate the map so that you're pulling the boss to the areas you need to pull it to in order for you to access the power node safely. Power node location memorization is going to be very important here. It's going to come with time. At the start, it's going to be a struggle, but after a few runs, you should have it pretty on lock. This is where I think you're going to save the most amount of time by just memorizing these locations. When it comes time to deal damage, number 1, make sure you have full power ammo. Number 2, make sure you have your super. Number 3, make sure the boss is in the room before you lock it. Please don't make that mistake, otherwise you're going to waste a complete phase. Be aware of your buff timer. You may need to refresh your buff, which means killing a Minotaur. If you have less than 10 seconds as you are completing that final node, you're going to need a new buff, probably. This is a scenario where you will want to leave goblins in the main room alive to generate elemental wells if on solar, or I guess any subclass really, they can all benefit, which is not a very hard thing to do during the frantic nature of the powered node portion of the fight. Just don't kill these 2 goblins in the main starting room. It's very easy to ignore them. If you need to kill a Minotaur instead, because the goblins are gone, be aware that Minotaurs despawn as the boss becomes vulnerable. So kill them earlier rather than later, otherwise they're just going to vanish and you won't get anything. Now it's time for damage. Warlocks. You have a pretty complex rotation compared to your peers. You drop your well, you're firing rockets, you're throwing grenades, you're shooting Wither Horde. It sounds easy, but mixing these together in a coherent way will take practice. Drop super, Wither Horde, grenade, rocket, rocket, grenade, rocket, grenade, Wither Horde, grenade, rocket, grenade. In that order, specifically. This will be on the test. Try to pace your rockets so that demo is always reloading you. If you try to proc demo too quickly, it's not going to work and needs a couple of seconds. Your grenades are going to be coming back very quickly, so if you're ever overwhelmed, at the very least, just mash on your grenade button until they stop working. Hunters. You should kill your goblin for an elemental well, pick it up, and then Wither Horde, rocket, rocket if you have another, gunpowder gamble nade, rocket, Wither Horde, swap back to your rocket, other grenade, rocket, super, and then a couple more rockets while flailing around trying to avoid the boss. Titans, it's a bit less exciting for you. Bonk a goblin to get radiant and to spawn a well, then Wither Horde, rocket, rocket, grenade, rocket, reload behind a barrier, rocket, into your super. This damage window is incredibly short, but fortunately you can get to another one rather quickly. This is going to repeat until the boss dies. You will be here for quite a few rotations. This is an intense fight with death around the corner at any moment if you let your guard down. Even a slightly missed jump over a supplicant could mean certain death. And don't forget that you can still fall into an endless pit in the second room too. You will definitely want to practice the pace of this encounter for a little bit, find that rhythm first, and then once you have that rhythm, you should start to see a lot more success. That is it for my solo guide. I tried to keep things as applicable to average players as I possibly could. So if you do want to hit me with some well actually in the comments, that is fine. But this guide is directed more towards the average player. Just keep that in mind. Thank you very much for watching. Best of luck in there, and I'll see you next time.
All right, that was Pog. That was Pog damage. That one felt really good. I think I whiffed my Wither Horde at the start, but I don't think it even mattered. Rift. Energy. Scoop the perp. Scoop the perp. Probably should have left that guy alive. Because now we don't have a guy on this side. And all the trash mobs over here, so now we can go back. Okay. We got doors, baby. Both right. I hear you. Excuse me. There's no way that shot went right through him, dude. Juked, lol, idiot. Okay, I guess I missed one. Okay, let's just rebuff. Get the boss out of here. That one hits, but the other one didn't. Okay. Allegedly. Ah, it's that one. That's right. One of them. Of course, the other one is underneath the effing bridge. One I hate. You are the one I hate. Whoa. Do not want to shoot you. Whoa. Excuse me. Too many sploders in there, dude. Aye. It's unbelievable. Nope, switch. Okay. Oh my god, I even checked to see if the boss was in here. Oh, the preemptive shot. Okay. Stand a little bit further back, I guess. And that one whiffed hard. I'm potatoing, we're fine.